afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Coach Me. I'm one of your hosts, still in Nashville, Tennessee, Vic Sorrell.
And I'm Candice Rooney, joining you from Austin, Texas.
Hi, everyone. I'm Des Stevens, and I'm Zooming also from Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm the founder and CEO of Radiant Coaches Academy. Today, we have Kiki Dombrowski with us. Kiki went through the inaugural training of Radiant Coaches Academy back in 2012. She is an author, she is a coach, she is an educator, she is an energy healer, she is an intuitive, she's a lot of things. So we are super, super excited to have Kiki with us today, zooming in from Savannah, Georgia.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a treat to be here today with you all.
Absolutely. It's a treat for us too. And you're certainly one of the more well-rounded, so shall we say, coaches that we've had the pleasure of speaking to. And so I think right off the bat, I'm just most curious about what are the elements that you bring to coaching that you're most excited about?
Let's see. Well, I think that the one thing I want to say first is to distinguish myself from traditional life coaching in that I actually consider myself an intuitive reader or a tarot card reader for the most part, and I bring in the elements of life coaching. So I think that the thing that I'm most excited about is that I am offering services that I think, traditionally mainstream would look at something like, a tarot reading or a clairvoyant reading or any sort of divination reading, and they'd think a couple things, fortune telling and predictions. And what I try to do in my practice is actually bring in those mindsets, those present mindsets that are so important from coaching techniques.
Could you give us an idea of what a session looks like how it starts and how it progresses?
Yeah, sure. So, so I think that for me, it's really important to create a setting where the client that is visiting with me feels comfortable enough to engage in an open dialogue. I think that when people sit down for a tarot reading, there are some people that sit down and they just sit and they just, don't say anything. And they just want the person giving the reading to just talk for 30 minutes straight. And that is not how I run an intuitive session. It's really important for me to have an engaging conversation, to have an open dialogue, to ask open-ended questions, and be available to listen actively, so I'm able to have a conversation and start creating action plans through what the cards are showing me. So I suppose that to initiate a reading, I really try and offer a safe space, introduce myself, talk a little bit about, my background. I have been reading for over 25 years, so I feel pretty comfortable with what I see in front of me. I guess you could say I'm fluent in tarot cards, especially. And I love to open a session with the question, what do you want your reading to be about today? I like to say things like, I wrote down some really good questions. How could we, what do you want to focus on today? What questions do you have? A lot of times people come back and they'll say things like, well, I just want to see, what's going on in my present life. Or I have no questions. And so I try and probe a little bit more. I think that people, when they come in and get a reading as well, they don't want to give any advice. They're very closed up because they want you to prove to them that you have some sort of psychic ability. And so for me, it's really important to remind people that, we really have to establish a really supportive, stable, peaceful, balanced present moment before we could go into the predicting of the future. For example, if somebody comes in and they say, when am I going to get married? Okay, well, if you're not in a relationship presently, let's work on getting you into a frame of mind where you are putting yourself out there to get into that romantic relationship and communicate effectively so you get to a place of marriage. So I think that the reading, usually readings are anywhere between 15 minutes and 60 minutes. And I would say that what happens is I pull all the cards and looking at the cards, and this is where the coaching comes in. I look at the cards and I'll think of the interpretations that are very, common, like, I go to the library, pull a book off the shelf and go, okay, this is what the book says that the card represents. And I turn it into an open-ended question. So I'm trying to think of a card, for example. Okay, so let's think of like the Magician. The Magician is this really spectacular card. And obviously, we could talk for an hour just about the interpretation of each card because they're so complex and there are so many levels and there's so much mysticism and symbolism. But just for the sake of this conversation, the Magician could represent communication. And so maybe you look at the card and in a traditional tarot reading, you'd say something like, well, you really need to work on your communication techniques. Tarot and life coaching combined would say something like, so tell me what you think are the qualities of an effective communicator. So that's where the difference would be. So really what we're trying to do in a session is inspire, encourage, and support. But ultimately, for me, I always called myself an intuitive life coach. And in that, I always want to inspire people to develop their spiritual side and their intuitive side, because I really, truly believe it's going to help them evolve personally and really develop their ability to interact with the world around them and feel that they belong.
Yeah. So would you say tarot then? I think when I think the word tarot, I think very mystical, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a very practical approach to tarot. It doesn't have to be something so mystical or.
I think there could be both, actually. And that's the challenge, and that's, I guess, where the intuitive or the psychic or the clairvoyant side comes in. Each reading feels different from the other. So each reading is unique. And there are some readings that you approach and you look at the cards and you go, oh, wow, this is a very esoteric, mystical reading. There's lots of wisdom. I'm just going to kind of let divinity move through me and I'm just going to share what I see and then start asking questions. But then there are other ones where there is a practical approach to it as well, where it's like, okay, so your question is, am I going to buy a house? All right. So, necessarily the tarot cards are not going to say, okay, have you talked to a loan officer yet? So you can start to engage with them away from the tarot cards as well and asking those practical questions. I think too, and this kind of goes into my spiritual practices as well, you always have to, work through the mundane before you start working through the magical.
I like the way you're putting that. This is fascinating to me. And I will say, as a recipient of one of many of your readings, I love how the coaching and the tarot work together and the other intuitive gifts that you have. So for me, what it feels like is my intuition is having a conversation with your intuition, and it doesn't feel one-sided. I've had intuitive readings. They give me information. It's fascinating. It's interesting, but it's so much more powerful when we're talking back and forth. And of course, coaching is just about having a conversation. So I just remember thinking during my sessions, like, this is so fun. This is not about like, oh, your gifts. This is almost like I'm realizing what my gifts are because of your gifts. It's great. It's really fun.
That's wonderful. And I always enjoy having conversations with you because that really is the goal of getting a reading. I think that there are people that come in, I'll say, for a walk-in reading who really just want to know when they're going to get married. But I really think that that a tarot/life coach session can be so impactful. It could be so empowering, and it could be so inspiring if you're willing to have that even exchange and have that conversation. And you know, it can be like that deep conversation that you usually have around, you know, a bonfire or a cup of tea. You know, it's supposed to be a little bit more profound than just, okay, here are some lottery numbers.
So I want to circle back just a second to when you just said trying to help people embrace the mundane before they get to the magical, or in order to get to the magical.
Sure.
And I think a lot of times maybe people come to you expecting magic as the result of, you know, of what they may have preconceived about your work. So how do you go about explaining to people or sort of guiding them into the value of the mundane?
That's a good question, and maybe one I need to think about and meditate on when I have conversations with people, because I think that you're right. You know, a lot of people do come and they just want to be wowed. You know, like, oh, you do know my middle name without me telling you. You know, or oh, you do know the color of my car. You know, and I think that the one thing I really like to do is on my website, when you read my information, I try and explain myself and explain that my method is unique. And maybe I'm not the right person for everybody, but that's okay. But the people that do come to me will know, like, hey, when you sit down and get a reading from me, I'm not going to tell you the name of your deceased great aunt. I'm not going to give you lottery numbers. I'm not going to, you know, start with, okay, this is the date you're going to get married. You know, we're going to start with, okay, this is what I see happening in the present moment. You know, these are the things that are influencing you. How do you feel about that? What do you feel when you look at this card? Does that resonate with you? You know, and I think that is important too, to ask those open-ended questions. Have you talked to your lawyer? Have you talked to your therapist? Have you had a conversation with your significant other? When's the last time you evaluated your self-care routine? You know, these are really important questions to ask. So I think that the way I try and get my clients excited is saying, you know, we're really going to come up with ways to make impactful improvements in your life right now. So when you leave this reading, you're going to feel excited, you're going to feel hopeful, and you're probably going to have some next steps to take that are going to influence what you do in a beneficial way.
So something we love to do on the show is give our guests the opportunity to play a game with us.
Ooh.
So hopefully you like games.
Yeah.
Well, you know, some kind of games, right?
Yeah.
And so what Coach Me is obviously the name of the show. So we give our guests the opportunity to coach, to be coached, or to watch the coaching unfold.
Wow.
Which is most appealing to you?
Okay, could you repeat them again?
Sure. To coach, to be coached, or to watch the coaching unfold?
I really like the idea of watching the coaching unfold.
Okay. Who's coaching today? Anybody?
I think you should coach, Vic.
I knew you were going to do that. I knew it 7 minutes ago, which means I should be in Kiki's world. No, kidding.
Who do you want to coach, Vic?
I did feel it though. Well, who wants to be coached? Who's feeling eager to be coached today? It would have to be Des or Candice.
I would like to be coached today.
Okay, Des.
Ooh.
I knew this day was coming. And it's good that it happened this way, because now I don't have time to be nervous. So it just, boom. Okay. So Des, thank you for your interest and your willingness to be coached. How would you like to start your session today?
So I have canceled my travel plans between now and the end of the year due to the pandemic. It's already a decision I've made, and it was a hard decision for me to make it because I love to travel so much. And I think what I need coaching around is just kind of reconciling with maybe the disappointment or a little bit of grief around that, because my 2 trips, well, actually I had 3. My first trip was going to be to Wisconsin to visit my mom, a road trip. And I was going to see Chicago, my hometown. I was going to visit a friend. And oh my gosh, I literally just realized like why this is hard for me. So I was just writing about this the other day because I'm writing a book. And the last time I went to Wisconsin, I love Wisconsin. I feel like myself there. It's where I moved to Nashville from 27 years ago. The last time I went to visit my mom, I was also going to visit a friend about a couple of hours away. And this friend is someone I've known since 2003. She had a couple of bouts with cancer, and I didn't realize how sick she was, but I chose to not see her. The week kind of got away from me. She was like, oh, I'll see you next time. And I didn't take that 3-hour drive to go see her. And unfortunately, she passed away, and I wasn't able to say goodbye to her. And I said goodbye in my own way. And I regret that feeling of, oh man, it would have just been so easy for me to get in that car and go see her. And I remember the day I chose not to was like, I got a little busy with some work stuff on my laptop. My mom was being a little fussy, like, hey, you know, don't you want to spend time with me? And I was like, yeah, but I want to go see her. And it was just kind of one of those, like, I totally should have listened to what I wanted to do, and I didn't. And yes, she knows that I love her. Yes, we still talk, even though she's on the other side. Yes, the last time I saw her, it was beautiful, and I have no regrets in that way. But it's just this little bit of melancholy, you know, that she's been gone about a year now. And I also lost another friend that same month, a year ago. In fact, it was a year ago this week. So there is this part of me that when I canceled my trip this time, it kind of brought up that stuff, because if I went this time to see my mom, I would have also visited another friend on my last trip, which I plan to see on this trip, which now I'm not going to do. And I'm not going on another road trip to Arizona. I'm not going to Honduras in December. I feel okay with the decision to not go because it's based on safety. But there's this part of me that feels a little grief around not being able to see people in person, and how that's different, and how sure I could call my friend and sure I could call my mom, but I don't know when I'm going to see them. And I am struggling a little bit with, part of me is like, okay, I'm just going to be home. It's going to be fine. I'm going to travel next year. I've got all these trips planned. But what do I do with these feelings between now and the time I get to travel?
How do you feel about mysteries?
Mysteries?
Mm-hmm.
I love that life feels like a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
I love this feeling of like, I wonder what's going to happen. And I would say I live in a more mystical, mysterious, magical kind of space inside. I'm a 4 in the Enneagram. I'm a romantic. So I have a very deep well emotionally, internally.
How important is it to you to be in control?
You know, my first answer to that is like, no, I don't have to be in control. but then there's this part of me like, when I'm not in control, okay, I'm going to give you a good example. I have never wanted to purchase a house. I've never wanted to own a house. I've never wanted to have a mortgage, because I love this idea of like, I could just literally take a suitcase and a passport and go. And I like to move around. I like to travel. And when my husband and I bought a house, I made him put it in his name. And, you know, of course we're married, so it's also my house, but that's how much I don't want something to be in control of me. Like a house, like, oh, I'd have to sell a house in order to move if I wanted to move. And I'm a twin. And I think sometimes it's like a battle, like the identical twin battle, like who's in control? And I don't know, like, so maybe, what was your question about control?
How important is it to you
Important.
to be in control?
I would say it feels kind of 50-50. It feels like
Okay.
I like to be in control, but when I'm not, then I'm pretty adaptable, I think.
Okay. Well, when you're not in control, and you're physically safe and you feel emotionally safe, but maybe you're not the one able to make the decision, let's say that. What opportunities are there for you?
Okay, so my immediate thought when you said that is I don't like that feeling.
Mhm,
I do not like that feeling, like I can't go somewhere that I want to go,
mhm,
that I can't go to Honduras in December. And I will say the expectation of the travel is kind of what is hard for me. So
mhm.
for example, in December, I was going to help a graduation class that I've been working with high schoolers for almost 2 years. They're graduating in December and I want to be there for the party.
Mhm.
So I think my opportunity might be to, maybe it's acceptance, like accepting that I don't have control, maybe making the most of it. So I'm very creative. So I'm thinking right now when you're asking me this, like, what can I do instead of being there? You know, like there's this great software I just heard about called Get Montage, where you can like do these videos and like, you know, you can show this video of all these people saying things to people. And I was like, oh, we need to do that. And I'm going to send them some things like diplomas and some gifts. And I think humans are adaptable and I'm trying to adapt as best as I can. So I think my opportunity externally would be getting creative with how else I can be in those places. And internally, my opportunity is just to relax, you know, like I kind of feel this grip, this like, for example, I own my own business, right? So I get to make all the decisions, right? It's awesome. And I homeschool my son. I decide about that too. So there's this, when I have to reschedule, it feels like I'm holding on, I'm gripping on. And so maybe my opportunity is just to relax that grip.
So do you feel like you've experienced do you feel a sense of shift with regard to this at all?
When I had to make my travel change or right
Well,
now?
in comparison to where you are now versus where we started the conversation about
Yeah.
now being sort of focused in on the opportunities.
Yes, I feel the shift is I didn't realize that there was an emotional attachment to going. That helps a
Mhm.
lot because now I feel like, oh, that's what I can do. I can focus on that being, you know, I don't feel stuck at home, but just being at home. So I also feel a little different, like, oh yeah, I could just like get creative with this and I don't have to see this as a bad thing. And I will say, honestly, I don't see it as a bad thing. It's just kind of hard to say like, oh, hey, I'm not coming, or, you know, hey, we can't do this time. For example, my December trip was bringing someone new to Honduras. And I always get super excited about someone coming for the first time. So that's hard for me, even though they might not even feel disappointed. I'm feeling disappointed for them, which is ridiculous. So yeah, I feel very, I just feel like I know, I understand more why I have felt this disappointment.
So do you feel like you've created a shift for yourself?
Yes.
Do you feel like there's anything better than being able to do that, to shift to a place where you can feel better?
You know, sometimes I forget that internally we have so much opportunity. So I think this short session has showed me that my inner landscape is so much about my life and I have pretty much all control over that one. So yeah, that feels good.
So now what?
So now I'm going to focus on getting creative and processing some of this grief with my friends that I lost. And I'm not going to see it as a frustration.
Neither am I.
Feels good.
Feels good to
empowering.
me too. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you so much. That was, I just love how even a short session can, like you said, shift things. So that was fun. Thank you.
I had a good coach. I still do.
Thank you both. I think a lot of people watching this are going to be able to relate to how you're feeling does. This feeling of wanting to go somewhere, wanting to see family, people you care about, and not quite being able to do that. So I think it's very relatable.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I literally felt a shift in experiencing and witnessing you shift. So what a cool thing about coaching, you know?
So speaking of shifts, I just want to acknowledge Kiki. About 8 years ago, I barely knew her. So she was not at the time a coach that I knew or any of that. And she handed me a piece of paper. And she said, we were kind of coworkers, but we didn't know each other very well yet. And she said, I was at work and I had this like message. And so I wrote it down, and I think it's for you. And I still have that piece of paper, by the way. That piece of paper shifted my consciousness in a way that was so heart-blowing and mind-blowing, and was very empowering for me as a business owner. I was just forming my business, and it had a lot to do with this business that I started. So I just want to thank you, Kiki, again for handing me that piece of paper. And it was a message from my loved ones, my ancestors who I've never met, which was amazing. So I want to say thank you for that. And I also want to ask you, Kiki, I know because you're a writer, you're probably writing something new right now. And I hope you can tell the audience like what new book you might be writing.
Oh, well, first of all, that was an incredible session. It was really wonderful to watch that. So I'm really happy that I got to see that coaching happen in real time. And I'm so glad that piece of paper and that message is so powerful for you. I have a lot going on in terms of writing, a lot. Actually, for November, I am going to be participating in NaNoWriMo, which stands for National Novel Writing Month. And it is an international, like you could go to nanowrimo.org and find out about it. But I'm actually going to be wrapping up 2 expanded revisions of my first 2 books. I self-published them, and I am now going to be publishing them through Which Way Publishing. And those revisions will come out next year. Oh my God, it's right here. So I was actually a contributor to a 2021 planner. That's now available on Amazon. And next year, I will also be a contributing writer in a love spell book. So I'll be talking about divination associated with like love. So I think that should be fun. But in terms of new writing projects, as soon as November is done, I will be shifting into a new book, and I will be writing about tarot, and definitely writing about how my experience as a trained life coach has influenced the way that I communicate with my clients to help them have a more impactful session. So I'm really excited for that.
That is so exciting. I cannot wait to look into those, especially the love spell. I mean, I'm happily married, but I would love to read those spells. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and and kind of the fun thing too is that love spells don't necessarily just need to be about courting somebody for a brand new relationship. Love spells can be about just a way to reconnect with somebody, or a self-love spell, a way to show love for yourself, or love for a friend or a family member. So yeah, there'll probably be something in that book for every circumstance.
I absolutely love that. Love spell to heal a nation and a political division, and a world, right? That on the brink of opportunity always. So
absolutely.
Kiki, thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else that you can think of that you would love to share with our viewers, in addition to how they can best find you?
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you again for having me. This has been such a treat to spend time with all of you. You're all so amazing and talented. And if people are interested in getting in touch with me, they could go to my website, kikidombrowski.com. If you need to, you could just Google search Kiki Tarot, and I actually pop up at the top of the search. So it's really an easy way to find me. I'm also very, very active on Twitter, and you can find me there at Kiki D333.
Very good. Very good.
And just
Well,
before we end, sorry, Vic, I gotta
No,
ask.
no, absolutely.
We do have a social media question. I think you kind of answered it, but I'll ask anyways. And it's, how does tarot work? And how does it work with coaching?
How does tarot work, and how does it work with coaching? Well, so, and I'll just pull the cards out. So the cards are basically a system of divination, and some people believe that, the person reading the cards is going to move them along with the person getting the reading where they need to go to be in the appropriate place to pull the appropriate cards based on what they need to hear at a certain time. One time I heard an author that I met say that the tarot cards are spiritual flashcards. So I almost look at them as points on a map. So it's like a spiritual map where you just have all these bits and pieces that come together, and they could tell a movie or a story about what a person is doing and how it influences them, how, what they could do to have a deeper interaction with the world around them and better learn about themselves. It's all about personal development through spirituality. So I think that there is some sort of invisible force that influences them in a way to move them where they need to be for a reading. And so I know that was the first part of the question. And the second part of the question was social media.
Oh no, and it's how do the cards work with coaching? Like how like the coaching session?
Well, it's interesting. I always think of this, and this is something that I was just kind of contemplating on earlier. When I think of a traditional therapy session, I think of somebody who focuses in on the past. When I think of life coaching, I think of somebody who focuses in on the future. And when I think of tarot readings, I think of somebody who focuses in, a life coach focuses in on the present, and a tarot card reader focuses in on the future. And so when you combine tarot and life coaching, you have this opportunity to build on what the cards are saying. You can build your session on developing a very, very goal-oriented future. So it's a way to build goals around the different messages of the cards.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Incredible definition. I'm going to use that. I'm going to
Okay. Oh, good. Write it down and send it to me because it just came out.
Thank you again, Kiki. Thank you so much to our audience, and have a great everything, everyone. Take care.
See you next time.
Bye.